topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
This is Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. Do you want to live a more fulfilling life? Do you want to live your legacy and achieve your personal, professional, and financial goals? Well, coming up on Divya Parekh's Beyond Confidence, you will hear real stories of leaders, entrepreneurs, and achievers who have stepped into discomfort, shattered their status quo, and are living the life they want. You will learn how relationships are the key to achieving your aspirations and financial goals. Moving your career or business forward does not have to happen at the expense of your personal or family life, or vice versa. Learn more at www.divyaparekh.com, and you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. This is Beyond Confidence, and now here's your host, Divya Parekh.
Good morning. So thrilled to be here with you, and just wanted to share we had some technical glitch and we were able to resolve it thanks to Juan. He is amazing. And that again goes back to sharing that story about kindness. And kindness also means having the right people around you. Because when you surround yourself with the right people who look out for you, who are not just there to support you, who are there to, think through and see what could go wrong and help you problem solve. So it really helps. So thank you, Juan, for your kindness. And for those of you who have got our books, Expert to Influencer and the Entrepreneur's Garden, thank you, thank you, thank you. Because of you, we are able to help entrepreneurs from kiva.org. And please, also what I want to share with you is that if you have not got our books, please get the books and let us know. We will be sharing with you free course on AI, artificial intelligence, on how you can use it. So reach out, share with us. And without further ado, let's bring on our guest.
Hi, good
Welcome,
morning.
Rusty.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for having me.
Good morning. It is just fantastic that we were able to kind of get you, because it really is helpful to have the guest. I was thinking it has happened before where our guests have had emergencies and not show up. And then I'm scratching my head and thinking, what am I going to be talking about today? So I can definitely talk, but having a conversation is wonderful.
Yes. Thank you.
So we start out usually from childhood. Do you recall any moments from your childhood that stand out for you positively even today?
Yeah, I was very fortunate as a child to have parents that believed in the arts and believed in my brother and I having a chance to actually express ourselves through the arts. And so as a kid, I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to learn how to dance. I spent 10 years learning tap and ballet, and then was able to take that and I acted, I sang, I did all kinds of things in the arts. And still to this day, I support the arts, not as a performer or an actor, but as one who is a philanthropist that supports the arts. But I'll tell you a little story. It's funny you bring it up because it popped into my mind the other day. I was 7, 8 years old, and I was the understudy for Fritz in the Nutcracker, in the ballet The Nutcracker. And I remember being in a situation where I was practicing doing all of the things that, if I was ever to step in, I never got to step in, by the way. I never got the chance because he was never sick and he was really great. And I was running around the stage and I dropped the Nutcracker. I broke the Nutcracker. Now, to everyone else, the adults, that was no big deal. They had another nutcracker. To
Mhm.
me, I had done the worst thing. Like
Oh,
it was the failure of the failure, right? That I had broken the nutcracker, and I cried, and I thought I'd never get a chance, and I remember the director coming up to me and putting his arm around me and said, "If that's the worst thing in life that life ever gives you, you're going to be a lucky and fortunate young man." And and that stuck with me. And I think it's a little bit about, for me, um, at that young age, there was a couple of lessons in there. One is, I was doing my best. I was trying to prepare to get ready in case my moment ever came, and I was taking, I guess, my own little risk by taking the nutcracker and doing the thing that I needed to do. But those things don't always work themselves out, but they do work themselves out. And that we have to take those risks, and we have to always try to be prepared and always try to be ahead of the situation. Um, and then it was also, an understanding that, for me, that, there are many, many things in life that are going to run into us, that we're going to run into, that are being a lot worse. And every time you drop the nutcracker or you break the nutcracker, there probably going to be something else that will be worse than that. And we just get over things and we move forward. And
mm.
so hadn't thought about that for years. Came up to me the other day, and now you asked me the question. So that's really funny.
Yeah, no, it's so profound that everybody drops the nutcracker, and it's so symbolic of our failures. And we are so hard on ourselves, thinking that we cannot make any mistakes, and that's our first mistake in itself.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
So beautiful story. So as you grew up, I know you are in tech. Were you interested in technology since you were young, or was there an event in your life that moved you towards it?
Well, what I would say to you is that technology is really anything that's been invented within our lifetime, right? So there are a
Hmm.
lot of things that were invented during my lifetime as a child that I saw and used for the first time. And I go back to a little bit here with my father. My father was also an audiophile. And so he built his own speakers, his own amplifiers, his own
Oh, wow.
receivers. Yeah, and it was back when you could do those things. These days, it's really difficult to, we don't I guess we could build our own computers. I guess people do, but why would you anymore? But I was always fascinated, by watching him, take these tubes, these cathode ray tubes, and put them in, and all of a sudden, music could come out of it. And so I was always fascinated by what technology might have been, or might be. And then when I was in college, it was the beginning of where, these big, huge computers would sit in large rooms, and only a few people got access to them. Only the database administrators. All the rest of us would go to them and say, "Here, run my Fortran cards," or "This is what you want out of it." And I got a chance early in college, and it was just like a part-time job at night, where I would shut down the computer. I would back up the disks, and these were huge, big disks that you would take out, and then you would put in, and you would slide back in, and the campus-wide computer would go down at 10 o'clock every night. Needed to be backed up, and I got a chance to do that, and I thought that was really cool. And I would just sit around and I would play on this little, really wasn't a personal computer yet at that time. It was basically just a terminal, and you could, play around with it and program in little, animations and things like that. And I thought that was really awesome. And then I just sort of stepped away from all of it. I was in radio and television, and I was doing those things, and I was like looking at technology and wondering, where it was going to go. But I was not a particular user of it. And then I really came back to it when I was recruited to become the head of HR for a video game company. electronic arts, EA, people would know it as mostly. And that was in the late 90s. And boy, I was thrust into it because all of a sudden I was living in Silicon Valley. And, you know, the internet had only shown up about 4 years before that we all could get access to it. And so, yeah, since then, it's just been an immersion of technology. And, you know, I heard you mention, you know, in the prologue here about, you know, what you're going to do with AI. And I'm fascinated with that and trying to stay, you know, on the cutting edge of where does artificial intelligence go, and, you know, what's our responsibility to AI, and what's AI's responsibility and those who build it back to us. And so, you know, we live in a fascinating and amazing time where technology moves a lot faster than we can. My friend Kevin Kelly, who was the founder of Wired magazine, he wrote a great book called What Technology Wants. And he actually believes technology is its own kingdom that moves alongside the other kingdoms, and that it evolves whether we like it or not. And yeah, so I am fascinated by it.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is interesting that you were in, as you mentioned, that, you know, you were on the radio show and TV, you were in the media, and from there you made the transition into being head of HR, although it was for a company that was in your field. How did that transition go? What did the change bring? Any new challenges for you?
Yeah, a lot. What I would tell you is, so, you know, I was hired into the company, and I had been, so my arc was, I got out of radio and television and media when I really decided that it wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do, but I knew I didn't want to be on the radio. I learned it didn't turn out to be what I thought it was going to be. And, but I knew I wanted to be in entertainment and media, but I had to figure out a way to get back into it. Like and so I spent 10 years at PepsiCo in HR, hanging around everybody that I could that had anything to do with marketing, advertising, buying, media creation, you know, public relations, getting to know them, trying to learn that language, because someday I thought maybe I'd get a chance to find my way back to entertainment and media. And I told every headhunter, don't call me unless it's entertainment or media. And then in the mid 90s, I started to say, or a technology company that enables entertainment or media, which is why I got the call for electronic arts. And so, so I'm the head of HR, being recruited for really the first one that the company had really ever had. And it's so funny because here I didn't have any of this technology background, but I was getting recruited into a technology company. And my boss, the CEO at the time when he was recruiting me, was like, you know, I think you're great. I think you can do everything we want you to do. But, you know, this company is full of software engineers and software animators, and I've got to stand up in front of them and say why I hired you versus going out to a traditional technology company and bringing somebody in, because you're going to be responsible for hiring them, developing them, making sure that they reach their full potential, helping us organize, figuring out the culture, strategies, all those kind of things. And it's just one missing piece in the jigsaw puzzle for me. And I need your help in figuring out, you know, how that all comes together. And basically, he was looking for a story. You know, what's the story that I can tell people? And I said to him, well, Larry, you got to think about it this way. I went to Purdue. And he goes, yeah, I know it's a great engineering school and all that stuff, but you were a liberal arts major. And I said, yeah, I know. I said, but I dated a girl who was a material science engineer. And he goes, all right, you've lost me. You've lost me. What are you talking about? And I said, well, you have to understand, for most of my time in college, I hung around engineers. And I learned their aspirations, their fears, their insecurities, the way they learn, their difficulties in social interactions when you're so technically minded, their need for validation, their need to understand that what they're working on has more than just a task. It has to have purpose, and for them to put their entire being into it, and just how vulnerable it is to be anybody who creates anything. And I said, you take that along with my creative background. I said, that's why I think I could do it. He goes, perfect. You answered my story. And so I got hired. And by the way, it was quite a hiring process. It was 15 different people, 3 different visits. We called it the gauntlet. Basically, the idea was, back in the day, people would say, oh, you got to hire really fast. And that was not it was hire slow. Make sure that, we're doing the right thing for the company, but we're also doing the right thing for the individual, because we don't want to make a bad hire, because it really hurts people if they come here and then they fail. And then the next thing you know, they got to find a job and they got to explain it. So the company was very responsible that way. So I went to the gauntlet. I get hired, and I go there, and I'm totally lost. I would go left, everybody else would go right. I felt like I would say right, and everybody else would go left. And I had come out of PepsiCo, which was known for a very hard-charging, performance-driven academy kind of company and culture, and everybody wanted to hire somebody out of PepsiCo because that'd be great. They'll help us bring that to the culture. But I also knew there was this thing called the PepsiCo bounce, where most people who leave PepsiCo and then went into another company would be bounced out, or they would quit within 18 months because there just wasn't a cultural match. And people would say they want you, but then you would come there and that's not really what they wanted. Or you would go there thinking that they wanted you to move the place faster and they didn't really want to move faster. So there'd be a frustration. I was determined not to make that happen to me. I left PepsiCo as one of the high potentials on my way to the top. And I was like, I'm taking this risk. I'm going from this big company, this little company. Everybody, including the CEO of PepsiCo, is telling me I'm making the dumbest move I could ever make. What a stupid thing you're doing. You're throwing your career away. And I said, I'm not going to mess this up. So I said to myself, I would start my first 6 months with the company only asking questions. That everything that came out of my mouth would be a question mark. Because if you go into a place and you say, well, I think we should do it this way, or, I think this is probably better, the people on the other end, they don't hear a period at the end of the sentence. They hear an exclamation point. And when you walk out of the room, or they walk out of the room, they get together with everybody else and they say, I can't believe that guy's telling us what to do. He hasn't even been here a second, and he doesn't know us. He doesn't know the culture. And I'd seen that so many times. I was like, okay, I'm not going to let that happen to me. So I'm going to end everything with a question mark, and I'm going to ask really hard questions. And I'm going to say, why do we do it this way? Have we ever thought about doing it any other way? Well, when we did it this way prior, what happened? Does anybody else have any ideas on how we could do it differently? And I was about 6 months in, and the chief creative officer of the company, I'll never forget it. He comes into my cubicle. We all worked in cubicles. And he stands at the door. He's a big, tall guy. He's got his arms crossed and he's looking at me like this. And he goes, I know what you're doing. And I said, what am I doing? And he goes, this whole question mark thing. You just keep asking questions. He keeps asking. He goes, you're afraid that if you express your opinion and your point of view, that you don't think that people will respect it because you haven't been here or understand us well enough. And I said, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. You got it. He walks into my cubicle, puts his hand on my shoulder, and he says, you've now earned the right to stop asking questions.
Very powerful.
And from that point on, I began to say, I asked the question, and then I'd say, well, I think. And people would go, okay. And all of a sudden, when I wanted to go right, people went right. Or I wanted to go left, they went left. And it was almost, Divya, like something in a science fiction movie where like you're behind the plasma, and you're trying to work your way through it, and you pull your way through it, and on the other side, there it is. Or maybe it's the Chronicles of Narnia in the back of the closet, you open it up and all of a sudden there's a new world. And from that point on, I was one of them. And it was great. But those first 6 months, and I would just encourage anybody who's going into a new environment, new culture, changing industries, changing jobs, maybe getting promoted up into something that is, where you get up in the morning and you're in the shower going, I'm not sure I know what I'm doing yet. Use the power of the question mark. The power of the question mark. It's a very, very, very powerful tool, and it will give you confidence, and it will give you license to actually go into places that you probably shouldn't or couldn't go into when you're new. But you'll be able to go into those places because you'll be able to ask questions, and people will say, oh yeah, come here. Let me tell you. People love to hear themselves talk. You're probably saying that right now about me. You're probably going, he loves to hear himself talk. He should shut up.
But you're on a podcast, so you're supposed to talk.
Yeah, but people love to hear themselves talk. So when you ask them questions, or you start with, tell me about you, and tell me about your dreams for the company or personally or professionally. People love to answer your questions. So the power of the question mark is really something not to be walked over.
Yes, no, I completely agree with you, because as a coach and consultant, what has always happened is that when you step into any place with curiosity, and as you mentioned, people love to talk about themselves, or they love to hear their own voices, what happens is that you're understanding, you're getting a deeper sense of who they are. And if you know who they are, then you are going back to what you said earlier, that you know what are their pain points, insecurities, dreams, desires. That helps you connect with them at a deeper level and get the pulse of it. Because so many, as I work with so many different executives from different companies, what happens is that they go in, as you mentioned, when you're in a new job or in a new environment, it's all about, how do I make my mark? How do I build my presence? So rather than focusing on that I need to establish my expertise, as you mentioned, using that power of question is powerful in itself.
Yeah. That and the importance of building relationships. That's, and that's also what happens when you talk to people and you ask them questions. I think so many times, we all stumble in new jobs or new experiences or anything that we're trying new. And, the question you have to yourself when you stumble is, will anybody be there to help pick you up? Or will they just walk past you and let you just lay there? And the difference is the relationships. Like if you make a mistake and you have a lot of great relationships inside of a company early on, people will give you the benefit of the doubt, and then they'll come and they'll try to help you not make that mistake again or get over it. If you don't have those relationships, if you've come in and it's about you and you haven't built those and you're trying to prove yourself and it's just overly obvious and you're not asking questions, you're doing it. When you stumble, there's likely a number of people are going, it's okay. I don't think he or she fits anyway. And, and that's a problem for everybody.
Yeah. And that's a really good point. So as you continued through your journey, and I know that you have been on board of directors from President Obama to multiple other prestigious boards. So share a bit about your journey and what are the lessons you have pulled together from being on board of directors that you could share with our audience.
Sure. First of all, let me say this. Everybody should sit on a board of some type at some point in their life, because There's an old adage, where you sit is where you stand. And if you're in a company and you look at the board of directors and you have no clue why they do what they do, how they do what they do, who they are, what they go through, any of those things, you look at them as if they're some other entity. And they are not another entity. They are part of, and very important part of, the success of the company, and ultimately you as a part of the company. So learning how a board works and what they do and the pressures and all the things that they have under them is an amazing, amazing experience. And you don't have to be on a corporate board to do that. You can join a nonprofit board and get the understanding.
Mhm.
And because boards are boards, they govern an entity. It just so happens that for-profit boards and nonprofit boards have a different tax code, but they do the same thing. They have a responsibility for fiduciary and governing and hiring and firing the leader of the organization, and understanding and setting the strategy and supporting the strategy of the organization, and making sure the organization is funded and growing and all those things, representing shareholders, donors, it doesn't matter. And so sitting on a board, if you want to be a CEO someday, or you want to be a large leader of an entity that would have exposure to a board of directors, go find yourself a board to sit on today. In your local community, small company, reach out. I mean, it's crazy the number of people who like go, well, I never get to be on a corporate board. Do you know how many startups that there are out there who are dying to have somebody who has expertise in sales, marketing, operations, technology, human resources? I mean, financial, it's crazy. They're all dying for it, but they won't approach because, oh, no, nobody would want to be on my board. I'm just a little company. Go find yourself one. Go find yourself. Okay. So that said, there's some learnings in there too. Hopefully I mentioned, but here's the thing that is the best learning when you sit on a board. You get the broadest vantage point of the organization. You're not stuck in a functional silo. You have to zoom out, be able to see the whole thing, and then bring it back into context and say, all right, where is this organization going? And do I believe from everything that I've seen that we're going in the right direction? If not, what's my point of view? So sitting on a board is a phenomenal thing because you get this, because you have this broad range of things. You have to bring it all inside of you, and you have to develop a point of view. And that point of view has to be informed. And so you have to get informed, and you have to be educated, and you have to learn, you have to know everything. And every time you have to formulate a point of view about something, you've learned twice. You've now learned not only what this organization would do, but you also learned about your next job that you're going to have, what you would do if you're in that situation. And so I've worked with many entrepreneurs that have no respect for their boards, have no respect for their funders. I mean, crazy enough, they don't they look at them as their enemy. It's a necessary evil until I make them go sit on a board. And then they come back and they go, I get it. That's why my board wants all of the board materials 4 business days in advance, so that we can have time to bring it all in, and they can be better prepared when they come into my board meeting, and they're not sitting there going, well, I just got the materials this morning and I don't have a clue. And then you wonder why the meeting's unproductive.
Mm-hmm.
And so you learn the responsibilities of what it takes to get the best out of a board when you go sit on a board. And I would just tell everybody, go do it. And again, in the nonprofit world, it's the same. It's the same. The only thing in the nonprofit world is they want your money too, right? You're not just, they want some money. But I got to tell you, find a cause you're passionate about. Find a board that you can afford to be on. It can be a few $100s, and the board will be happy. But they've got your expertise. See, boards are for a CEO or for an executive director of an organization. Boards are like a jigsaw puzzle. And if they understand the philosophy, so if you have a jigsaw puzzle, on the front of the box, top of the box is a picture. And that's the picture you're trying to complete. And in a company, you have a strategy, or an organization, you have a long-range plan. And that's the picture you're trying to complete. And so you've got board members, advisors, staff members, funders, partners, anybody's got anything involved with the company. If you're in charge, you've got to basically take your picture, make them excited about your picture, and then cut up the pieces and give them one. And say, this is your role. And this is what you do to advance this organization. And when you're given one of those pieces, if it's organized and done well, you're given one of those pieces. That piece is really important, because if you don't fill in your piece, there's that little blank cardboard gray area that the picture doesn't come together. But when you do fill it in, you've learned something. You've accomplished something. You've made something better. And sitting on a board can give you that validation and that fulfillment, if you so choose to go do it.
So what I'm hearing, I've had limited experience with nonprofit organization, and it definitely resonates with me, that when you are sitting over there, you're zooming out and looking at the entity as a whole, as an ecosystem, rather than just as one function, especially if you're in a functional silo, or even if you're a manager.
That's right.
And how from the resources to investment to whatever is being distributed. So tell us, how did you pull all of this together and bring it in your book with your partner?
Yeah. So my friend Terry Brisbane and I wrote this book called The Faith Code. That's what it looks like, The Faith Code. And we wrote this book because 20 plus years ago, right after the iPhone came out, and Apple decided that they would open up the App Store, that people could build apps on their phones. We'll all remember, if we're old enough, the tagline, "There's an app for that." And Apple basically invited everybody into, use the word ecosystem, into their technology ecosystem to build apps on top of their platform, their iOS platform. And I gave this talk at Purdue, where I went to school, to the business school. Are you building your life as a platform or an app? And it was very early days of this. But I used the metaphor, and I said, a platform as we know it is dependable, it's consistent, things can be built upon it, it operates the same way, it very seldom crashes, it does need to be updated, but we count on it. In fact, when we turn on our laptops or we power up our phone, it would be chaos if it booted up differently every day. It starts the same way every single time, and we become dependent upon it. And that's what a platform does. And I said, are we building our life as a platform? And that those platform elements are things like deep relationships, values and principles that we believe in and that we utilize in our life. Do we have a faith that holds us up? Are we taking care of our mind? Are we taking care of our body? The things that, and faith being a part of taking care of your spirit. Are we building our life on that? Or are we building our life as an app? And an app being things that seem very important, but they come and go, like apps on our phones. And apps have a proclivity to fail quickly, or they crash, or they change a lot, or they come and they go. And all of a sudden, wow, that was the weather app that I always depended upon, but now it's gone. Or in the apps of our life are things that we think are really important, and they are, like our jobs, or where we live, or maybe the superficial friends that we have at the time, or our fashion, or our sports teams, or the places that we like to travel to. And the question you have to ask is, you say, is my identity rooted in those apps, or is it rooted in the platform? Because these apps will crash. And anybody who's ever lost their job, or who hasn't lost a relationship, right, that we counted on, and we thought that was going to be the love of our life, or the lifelong friend, or the member of our family that we could always count on, that those things fracture. And how many people do we know, and we all do, and you coach them and counsel them, who when the rug is pulled out from underneath them with their job, they feel like they're lost. Their self-esteem is gone. Their ego is gone. They don't know what is next. And I would posit to say that they're building their life on an app, not on a platform. Mm-hmm. And so I gave this speech. It resonated. Every time I'd go back to Purdue, I'd run into somebody for years and years, and they go, I'm still hanging on to that. I'm trying to build my life as a platform. And Terry Brisbane, my co-author, my book, also happens to be the pastor of my church. We would get together once a week, and he heard me talk about this, and years later he came back and he said, we should do a message series at church on that. Like, you could do these app things and the dangers of that, and I could do the platform thing. And I said, yeah, let's do that. So we did a 12-part series. It was a lot of fun. We called it Life Apps. And then coming out of that, a few years went by, and one day over coffee, he said, we should write a book. We should do a book on that. Now, I'd written a business book before, back in 2006, called Talent Force, and I knew how hard it was to write a book. And how hard it is to write a book. And anybody who aspires to write a book, let me just tell you, it's really hard. But he wanted to do it, and I said, well, let's just do it. Sure. So it took us 8 years. 8 years. But the book is written with the metaphor of the technology world, understanding, because we call it the faith code. Are you building your life on this platform, on this framework of faith, or are you building your life with a bunch of apps that are out there that constantly are changing, and people are trying to hang on to, but they change on us, and we don't know what to do. So where do you go? Where do you go? You go back to your platform. You update your platform. You update your operating system. Our belief is the operating system. We use the Bible, the biblical teachings as the operating system. And, those things don't change. We do. So you can go back and you can update yourself. And
beautiful.
Yeah.
And that's what it is, having that operating system, whatever your faith is, whatever your belief is, having that faith that there is something bigger than you, something that will sustain you, because you're not there alone.
That's
and
right.
That's what helps you get through the challenging times. Rusty, thank you so much for your insights and in-depth sharing. So where can people find you, and where can they connect with you?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn or on my own website, which is rustyrueff.com. In the show notes or someplace you'll see it. It's rueff.com. And you can find the Faith Code, anywhere that you buy books. And would love to hear from you. If somebody reads the Faith Code and has a point of view or any interest in it, would love to hear. So and thank you so much for what you're doing for others, because what you're doing and helping people live beyond confidence is, is noble, but it's also, it's what brings us all together and keeps us going. We need people who encourage us and help us keep moving through this crazy life that we've been given. So thank you.
Thank you, Rusty, for your kind words. Really appreciate that. And thank you for what you're doing. Just keep sharing your wisdom, because it helps people come out of the adversities and challenge. Sometimes just hearing a sentence, as you mentioned, very powerful. Are you living your life as a platform or as an app? What are you building in your life? So thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, listeners, because without you, the show would not be possible. And thank you, Juan. Until next time, be well and take care.
Thank you for being part of Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. We hope you have learned more about how to start living the life you want. Each week on Beyond Confidence, you hear stories of real people who have experienced growth by overcoming their fears and building meaningful relationships. During Beyond Confidence, Divya Parekh shares what happened to her when she stepped out of her comfort zone to work directly with people across the globe. She not only coaches people how to form heart connections, but also transform relationships to mutually beneficial partnerships as they strive to live the life they want. If you are ready to live the life you want and leverage your strengths, learn more at www.divyaparekh.com. And you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. We look forward to you joining us next week.